Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brever. Alongside me is Logan Camden, and we have got to talk about a little Monday Night Football, Logan, because we just saw the Chargers lose in the most Chargers fashion imaginable. As always, it comes down to the final drive of the game, and things just go south. So that's a Cowboys bounce-back win in the books after last week's shocking loss to the Niners. Considering all that, what did you take away from this game?
Carson, I still think the Cowboys are really flawed, and I think they're definitively fourth in the NFC for me, man.
Yeah.
One, the coaching decisions from McCarthy and Staley both in this game, man. Look, Carson, we talked about this. We texted during the game, and it's a fundamental difference that we have. I watch Steelers football. When the Steelers get in the red zone and it's close, we like 90% of the time we take the points, and I always think that is the way to go. Both of these teams, multiple times, let's go for it on fourth down, and let's not take the points. And those points add up, man. They're free at that point when you're down there in the red zone. I know the analytics say, you should go for it if you're this, close to the end zone. What did you think about all the coaching decisions? Because I thought this epitomized all the stuff we talk about Staley, all the stuff we talk about McCarthy and their boneheaded decisions. I just think it's foolish, man. When you get down there and there's free points on the board, just take them, man. The Chargers and Cowboys combined tonight left like 9 to 12 points on the board.
I have many, many problems with both Mike McCarthy and Brandon Staley as coaches. I think McCarthy blunder just gave up a chance at a free play with that whole timeout debacle at the end of the first half. I think Brandon Staley does something mind-blowingly dumb pretty much every game, and I just think the Chargers have so many lapses. They make so many mistakes that it's just a product of poor coaching. But to me, when you are driving, when you are inside the 20, like the Cowboys were, QB sneaks have had a 79% success rate since 2016 in those situations. That's just the smart football play, especially because this is not Steelers football, Logan. This wasn't the best offensive performance from either of these two teams, but these are two high-powered offenses who are expecting to have to put up a lot of points to win these games. That just feels like a results-based, not process-based takeaway to me. I think most of the time that is the right decision, and in games like this, field goals often feel like -4 instead of +3. Games between teams of this caliber offensively, I should say. So I was good with those decisions.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from because that is the other side of the coin, right? If you do kick a field goal and it comes back to bite you on the ass where you're beat by 4 points or less, it's, we let that possession go to waste. I'm normally a take the points guy, but you see the struggles, man, for both of these teams. But the Cowboys, too, in the red zone, man, you've got to finish these drives. And the Cowboys, without Kellen Moore, have really struggled to, period. Now, some of this, they're really close on the cusp. Michael Gallup drops a TD at the end of this game. Dak Prescott slightly overthrows Tony Pollard. They were really close, but both of these teams struggle in the red zone, and that's going to be an issue that rears its ugly head. That's still the biggest issue for the Cowboys to me, Carson, and that the fact that they cannot reliably get a running game going behind Dak Prescott. Tony Pollard, again, struggles in this one, and this is a Chargers team that has been up and down in terms of rushing defense, and the Cowboys struggle to run the ball again, and so those are still my biggest issues with the Cowboys. This is a good win. It's a good bounce-back win. It's a good football team. The Chargers are great. Or they're not great, but they're a good team. This is a good win for the Cowboys. But they've still struggled to run the ball, which I think you need to give Dak. Dak played a really good game tonight. I was impressed with Dak. He was rolling out of the pocket. He was making good decisions. He was making good throws. He was on time. He was on target. But the Cowboys have consistently failed to get the running game going, which, again, I think they need when it comes playoff time. And they have to finish drives in the red zone, which they haven't shown us, Carson, through 6 weeks that they can get in the end zone. That's the biggest issue to me with Dallas and why they're concretely 4 for me out in the NFC right now, man.
I think that they have to be 4, and this is the second consecutive week that they've really struggled to run the football. I do remain very underwhelmed by their offense. This was maybe Dak's best game of the year, but we've talked about how he's been up and down. He's made too many mistakes. He hasn't been fully in sync with the receivers here. It was really nice to see sort of a Brandon Cooks breakout game. I still think that guy is so talented and can be so productive, and it was good to see him get going with some really big plays in this one. And I thought the Chargers defense honestly played a really good football game. I thought that they were very physical at the point of attack. I thought that they had a big part in shutting down that run game, and I thought that they got a whole lot of pressure, and that pass rush has continued to progress over these last few weeks. Underwhelming start, now it's coming on strong with that star talent that you expect to produce more. But it's still the Chargers defense, and it's a defense that hasn't really fared that well against anybody up to this point. Got shredded by the Dolphins. I mean, led up more to the Titans than you would like. Pretty much got shredded by the Vikings, but turnovers helped them a little bit there, a very timely turnover in particular. So I don't view that as a good defense, and I do think that leaving this game with just 20 points against them is underwhelming. But this does feel like it says more about the Chargers to me, or really that this game was in their hands. And I feel like this was the rare loss that was actually on Justin Herbert.
Oh, yeah, man.
Generally, we are, I would say, Herbert defenders, and there's the dynamic of people who are like, well, Herbert's basically got a 500 record. How could he be so infallible? And it's, well, he's consistently had some of the worst defenses and coaching and run games in football. And the run game is legitimately awful. They and the Bucs the last 2 years are like in a tier of their own in terms of just inability to run the ball week in, week out. But Herbert actively cost them points on a couple occasions in this game. First half, misses Keenan Allen wide open on what could have been a touchdown on the sideline. Missed him on another big third down in that first half where he was open, just underthrew him. Missed him on that double move where he was streaking up the sideline in the second half. That should have been a touchdown. He nearly threw a pick to Deron Bland that was in and out of his hands. He blew them another touchdown, which luckily on fourth down they were able to convert, but that throw to Eckler that was late and behind him. Listen, the final drive, I think you can't put on him that much just because the protection wasn't there. He has the sack, and then the interception. To me, a sack ends the game there. You're not going to convert a 4th and 20, so I don't have a problem with him trying to make a play happen. But this was the best the defense has played. They stepped up. They put you in a position to win this football game, and he made too many mistakes throughout, cost them too many potential big plays with off-target throws. This one is on him.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Carson. And Herbert's a guy that I still think is, a top 5 QB in the league. I think he's, for me, 4 or 3 between him and Joe Burrow. It's a toss-up. And you still see the flashes of why people fall in love with Justin Herbert. That one time when the edge rusher got home off that play-action fake, and he bends his arm and somehow gets that ball out. He's got a rocket on his shoulder, man. He's so great at evading pressure, at getting out, at creating. He can scramble a little bit. But yeah, he cost them this game. I mean, point blank, dude. You laid out all the plays. I thought there was another one, too, where Bland dropped a pick earlier in this game that could have been another one on his stat line. I think Herbert did cost them in this game. But you're right, too, man. It's hard to judge him when there's so many issues surrounding this Chargers team. The running game, the offensive line isn't great. I do think he's got good receiving talent. I think Keenan Allen is awesome, man. You see him all over this game. I felt like he was open all night, and Herbert, again, misses him on 3 throws that changed the dynamic of this game. And also, too, another part of why this game was so close and why they even had an opportunity at the end of this game was because of that disastrous muffed punt where, I think Tolbert thought that it had bounced off of the punt returner, and so he goes to return it, and it gifts the Chargers points there. So that's another reason why this game is even close. I don't have any faith in the Chargers, man. I think that this is Brandon Staley's last year as head coach. I don't think he knows what he's doing. I think Kellen Moore should be promoted to HC. I think they need to invest in this offensive line. And then, the defense played a great game today, Carson. I still think they are a far ways away from being competitive. Their D-line got home, like you mentioned, but the biggest issue to me with the Chargers is they cannot cover over the middle. Those intermediate middle routes where they crossed over, if it was CeeDee Lamb, whoever it was over the middle, it was CD most of the night, where Dak is just finding that middle zone behind the linebackers and in between the safeties, and the Chargers have consistently gotten picked apart there. I agree with you, though, about Brandon Cooks, too. I think that's a dynamic that the Cowboys need to lean into. You are not overwhelmingly talented at that position, and if you cannot get the running game going, you have to supplement it somehow. This offense cannot solely be on the shoulders of CeeDee Lamb. And Brandon Cooks is a baller, man. Get him the rock and let him go to work a little bit. I think that's something the Cowboys need to tap into if they want to take their offense up another notch. But I don't even have the Chargers like remotely close to being contenders as much as I love Herbert. I mean, normally transcendent quarterback talent can, cover up for everything. Bad coaching, bad offensive line, bad weapons, no running game, bad defense. Herbert is not a cure-all, and again, this is probably not the game to be making that case because Herbert cost them this game. The Chargers aren't even close to being on my radar, and it's disappointing because I had them as a playoff team this year. How is Justin Herbert going to miss the playoffs again? They're so far away, man. It's just disappointing.
Well, I didn't have them as a playoff team, but I did expect them to be a good football team because you thought the line was improved. You thought this should be the healthiest and best group of weapons he's had. Of course, that has changed with the Mike Williams injury, and they just continue to be so unfortunate on that front. But the defense, unless they continue to play at this level, I think is among the handful of worst in football, a bottom 10 defense, I would say, definitely. And that just really limits what you can do. Found an interesting stat. Coming into this game, Herbert was 14-1 when the Chargers held the opposing team to 20 points or less. So that's what I'm saying. Historically, he does his job when they play capable defensive games. This has been an elite offense. Crazy thing about that stat, Logan, the only loss on Herbert's resume under those circumstances was a 20-17 loss to the Cowboys. Exact same scores tonight from 2 years ago. How about that? But to me, they have too many flaws. They can't run the football. They're bad defensively. They're poorly coached. What is the difference between this year's team and last year's team? I just don't see one now that the receiving core is injured anyways. So they're not a complete football team. Staley has to be gone. That's been obvious to everyone with eyeballs for a year at least. And the penalties are killer in this game. These were two teams that played undisciplined, what felt like poorly coached football games, and that's the story. That's what it felt like at points in this game. It was all right. Who can blow more red zone opportunities? Who can miss out on more opportunities for big time plays? Who can have that killer special teams moment? That's what the Chargers have been known for more than anyone, but the Cowboys have had their fair share of untimely mistakes like that over the last couple years too, of coaching blunders, of all those things, and it's hard to fully buy in on either of these teams because of that, but I do think the Cowboys are in a different tier because that defense is just on another planet, and this wasn't their most dominant game, but they came up with that big-time pressure when they needed it.
And I really think that the Cowboys could have put up, 34 points or something in this game with the way they moved the ball. Again, it was just execution in big spots where you could say similar things for the Chargers, but it felt like the Cowboys were way closer again. Dak just misses Pollard. Michael Gallup drops a touchdown in this game. Dak played a really good football game, and even without a running game, they were still a good football team with the defense behind them. The one thing that I came away from this game that I thought was pretty funny was I was like, damn, if the Cowboys fire Mike McCarthy at the end of this year, if this goes south and this is McCarthy's last year in Dallas, it'd be awesome if you had a young offensive coordinator waiting in the wings that you could promote to head coach, man. The Chargers have lucked into that boat where I think I'm not even mad. I would be happy as a Chargers fan that if you let Staley go, awesome. Give Kellen Moore the reins. Let him take over the offense. Let him overhaul the team. I do think the Cowboys bundled that move, man, by letting Kellen Moore go. I know he wasn't great last year. He schemed up, I think, a little too much stuff downfield for Dak. That's why he had all the interceptions, right? But his track record, he's been a top 5 offensive coordinator for 3 years. I think the Cowboys really messed that up by not giving him the reins and turning it over to him, because I think we've seen legitimate regression, and I think some of that can be, because of the play calling, differences that we've seen. So I think the Chargers are going to be really happy if they promote Kellen Moore, and I think it's an inevitability at the end of this season.
Yeah, I know that there have been questions about if Moore has that sort of head coaching personality at this age, but Mike McCarthy is not a guy that I would want to invest in. Brandon Staley certainly isn't a guy who I want to be invested in long term, so I would take Moore just because of his mind above both those guys. And we've seen dudes who don't have conventional head coaching personalities step up in a big way, and it's great to have a brilliant offensive mind leading your football team, period, point blank. So it's the same old story to some extent. Again, the Chargers defense played better today, came into this game 30th in yards allowed per drive, terrible, and they still allowed more than 34 yards per drive, which is basically that average that they have allowed up to this point that is towards the bottom of the league. But they got some pressure. They made some big situational plays. They were able to shut down the run game. But they lose in painful fashion because that's just what they do. So, yes.
Carson, you came up with a verb, though, a couple weeks ago, my friend. You see,
Yeah.
classic Charger. The Chargers are going to Charger, man.
Yeah, I don't know if I invented that, but it is a long, long lineage of the Chargers doing what they do best, and that is blowing football games. So, if you guys enjoyed this little quick reaction, then the good news is you can find all of our shows with video on the Volume YouTube page. You can listen to the show across audio platforms, and you can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.